there's a lot of times where when you type in that information, it says, hey, a single flight at this is about 250,000. Almost all the time, I go right back into it and I say, well, where did you find this information? And it'll say, well, I got this from 2 quotes based on y'all's information, and here are the 2 quotes. And then from there, we can dig into that. So we're not using AI. We're using AI to find our answers at the end of the day, really. Because there's so many times where it's like, well, where were our spiral staircases? Can we find one of those? And we're flipping through pages. And now it's like, hey, you can find it a lot easier from there. So we're trusting ourselves on that more than AI. I'm trusting the AI to find the answer.
Hello and welcome to the Make It, Move It, Sell It podcast. On this podcast, I talk with company leaders about how they're modernizing the business of making, moving, and selling products. And of course, having fun along the way. I'm your host, Adam Honig, the CEO of Spiro.ai. We make amazing AI software for companies in the supply chain, but we're not talking about that today. Instead, today, we're talking with Ryan Collier, the host of the ChatGPT Report podcast, also the Director of Business Development at the Shickel Corporation. Welcome to the podcast, Ryan.
Adam, really appreciate you having me. Thank you.
Yeah, no, my pleasure. Anybody who goes by the name of the King of Steel has to be on the podcast. That's one of my rules, you know?
Yes, I made that name up myself, so I don't know how much credit I can
so
really take. So
there wasn't like a big
that.
Coronation? They put like a steel crown on your head or something like that?
You know, it's funny you talk about steel crowns, though. Our accountant, our head of accounting in the office, she is a whiz at Excel, and we did make her a stainless steel Queen of Excel crown. So I have not received one of those yet, so I don't know if I'm due or not.
Gotcha. Well, tell us a little bit about Shickel and why you decided to use the King of Steel name.
Yes, so Shickel Corporation, we've been around about 80 some years. We are ornamental metals. We do monumental staircases, stainless steel guardrail, glass guardrail. My joke really that I tell people is we do all the sexy stuff that the owners like to look at in typical buildings. So we do all that, and our main area is really in the DMV area, all over Virginia, North Carolina. But we do all the fun stuff from bronze, like I said, stainless steel, carbon steel, and we bend, break, paint, anything you can imagine. So if it's a drawing or an architect has dreamed it up, we're the guys typically to work on it and install that type of work.
Gotcha. And so I saw, a whole bunch of like really fancy staircases and things like that on your LinkedIn profile. Yes,
that's our bread and butter. I mean, we do curved stairs. We've done huge portals into different buildings. Like I said, the stairs, the curve, the monumental type of stairs is really where we get after it, I would say. I mean, we know how to build those things, and we love stairs over here. We really do. But again, it's not just the stairs; it's all the weird stuff that owners typically need an answer to as well.
I know we were talking a little bit earlier about this, but what sort of are the most kind of unusual or interesting applications that you guys have seen?
Yeah, I mean, we do a lot of different weird stuff for companies that, for example, there's a local company that we're doing a tree for that if you've been with a company for a year or two, you get a little metal green leaf and you get to attach it to this tree. But we've also done different types of stuff. So there's a steel called Core 10 that rusts, right? And then it never rusts again. And you have to weather it to get it to a specific color. So these architects, they get this idea of, oh, I really want this deep orange on this building. But the problem is when the steel comes in from the shop, it's not that orange at all. It has to be weathered. And so there's a great video, if you look at my LinkedIn, of we have these planters for plants outside of a building, and we have them sitting outside of our paint shop, and we have just a spigot of water going back and forth on it, trying to speed up the weathering process so we can get to that really pretty orange that you're not going to see for years unless it's rained on. So that, in terms of unusual, we've got ones from little weird trees like that are 20 feet tall to just trying to weather steel to make it look to what the architect wants. And I wasn't even expecting that job to come in. It came in, and I remember standing out there taking the video, and I asked the guys, I said, what are we doing here? Like, well, the customer wanted this, so we got to get it done like this.
That's awesome. There's a hall at my university that was supposed to weather very nicely like that, but it just turned into the worst brown color ever. So
Yep. The key to it is it needs to be rained on and it needs some sun on it. So when they're indoors, they don't weather, surprisingly.
And so the king of steel. So it sounded like your background was more in technology before joining Shickel. Is that right?
Yeah, I did tech sales for a couple of years, and I was good. I very much enjoyed it. I like the sales aspect of it. But then the business development, the head of BD here was retiring, and I know a lot of people, I guess you could say, and I knew the owner, and he asked me to come on board, and I said, I'll be honest with you, I don't know a lot about steel. And he said, we can teach you. So I've been here 6 years, so I think I've learned a thing or two.
Gotcha. So compared to AI, how fast was it picking up steel then?
I mean, it was, I think it's more fun to be in the construction industry. I think in terms of tech and what you're selling, there really isn't a hard product you're looking at. You're really selling the idea, the vision of a product, where here it's, I mean, I could go into an office and go, hey, here's some samples for you and showcase this is what we've done. And you can feel and touch it. And I like that type of sales a little bit better because, you know, I talk to people all the time and they say, man, I saw your recent videos on some of the stairs you guys did, and man, they are cool. And I tell them, I'm like, it is cool, isn't it? Like these are neat things.
Yeah, there's actually people like physically touching them and everything. I know, like we work with a lot of manufacturers, and it's, you know, I was in a factory last week, and it's actually really gratifying to see like a physical product as opposed to something super abstract like software. Like, oh, what are people doing with it? We don't know.
Yeah, and then the other thing too is the only problem you have with it is you really have to be in people's offices to show them the samples. Because I can't tell you how many times I've taken a picture of it, sent it to them, and it's in the wrong lighting, and they say, "Yeah, that's perfect. I love that look." And then they get it, and they go, "Wait a minute." So that's the only downside of it.
Right. It's harder to show it on Zoom or something like that.
Correct. COVID was an interesting time for us trying to showcase our work. I was working day and night trying to figure that out.
Yeah. We have a customer that makes room size crushing machines. Like you put like stuff in it and it comes out to a fine powder at the bottom. And I'm just like, how on earth do you ever like show somebody how this thing is going to work? And they basically have to have people go to their plant and see how it works in order to demo it. It's from somebody from the software world, that's like such a radical thought, you know?
Right. I mean, it's so much more in person, and hopefully their plant isn't in the middle of nowhere, because that's what we deal with sometimes. We're not exactly in city centers, so to drag people out here to look at our stuff sometimes can be like pulling teeth.
Yeah. Well, it's really interesting because working with a lot of companies in this space, you know, they seem very relationship oriented to me. And I feel like part of that comes from this need for the in-person showing of the product, if you will. Do you feel like that's a driver as well?
Yes. And I think that's another thing too. I attend a lot of events and I try and talk with our customers as best we can. And I think a lot of that too is, when we do a project, we want to be relationship more than anything, because we want to get your business for the next job and the next job and the next job. And in order to get that, you have to do a good job. If you do a terrible job, they're not going to come back to you. And if you have the wherewithal just to go, hey, if we do a bad job, I'm at all these events that you're at, I'm in your office all the time. You can tell me if we did a terrible job, and I'll tell you why or what happened there. And so I do think construction is much more relationship than it was in tech. I mean, it really is, hey, especially in our world with ornamental metals, which isn't always low bid work. It's, hey, I'm willing to pay a little extra to know that this product is going to look good, the architect's going to look good, and that the owner that we're working with is going to hire us again. Therefore, you guys will get hired again. And so there's a lot of that balancing act. And like I said, I tell people all the time, if you don't like our work, you can yell at me in person, because I'm at all these things.
Well, it's really interesting to think about it being the sort of the finishing touch that people really focus on, because there's so much like that goes into making a building or any kind of structure, but people definitely get hung up on those little details, you know?
Oh, you're not kidding. I mean, we did Duke University years ago. We did their dining hall, and we did these massive portals. It was this black in color. And at the end of the day, we had done over 1,000 blackening samples to get it to exactly what they wanted. Now, mind you, of the 1,000, they picked, I think it was the top 10 one that we had shown them. So we went through this whole process, and they still ended up going back to the top 10 one. But just showcasing that and just kind of being customer oriented there it was crazy. But we had to do what we had to do. You had to get the business, and you had to hey, you're asking for this, we got to provide for you now.
Well, so I'm super interested to get your take on how AI might be impacting that. But before we jump into that, I just want to kind of back up for a second. So you started a podcast, the ChatGPT Report, which has become very popular with people about AI and stuff like that. How did you kind of get into that?
Well, it's kind of a funny story. It was actually two of us originally, and my one friend, it kind of dropped out about a little less than a year ago, just because he was like, it's just becoming a lot for me. I can't maintain it. And I said, that's fine. But he and I, it was the first week ChatGPT had come out, and he had shown it to me, and it was almost like finding the internet, to be honest with you, just what you could input, what you could do with it. And so after he had shown it to me, I said, we should start a podcast on this. I think it'd be pretty cool. I don't know if anyone would listen to us, but we should start. And he said, no chance, we shouldn't do it. And I told him, well, I'm going to do it anyway. I don't even know what we're going to talk about. I don't even know the style of it or anything. And he and I are pretty competitive. And he said, well, I don't want you to be successful without me, so I'm going to do it with you. And so that's how it started. And I'm glad he started it with me, because he was kind of the brains behind everything. I'm kind of the guy that I don't mind failing. I guess that's why I'm in sales, because you fail every day there anyway. And so we just kind of kicked it off from there. And we just got a ton of traction from individuals wanting to hear about it, just listen to it. One of the best compliments I got on the podcast is there's an individual who sells for ChatGPT. She's one of, I guess, the 700-800 employees there. And she emailed us and said, listening to your podcast, I credit a good amount with me getting the job, because I knew what was happening in the space. And so that was the coolest compliment I think I got from it, was, what we were looking at. She actually got a job at that company at OpenAI at the end of the day. So again, it really was just two guys being like, let's go for it.
Yeah. I love your comment about how, ChatGPT was kind of like finding the internet again. I had a kind of a similar experience. I was waiting for the developer beta to open for the OpenAI API before ChatGPT. And I was at the beach with my wife when I got the email saying, oh, you now have access. And I was like, we got to go. She was like, what are you talking about? I'm like, I got to go use this thing. I'll see you later. It's crazy just how impactful it's been in such a short period of time,
It's almost like, to me, it's like ChatGPT and the text to images, especially nowadays. I mean, it has really just changed the game for an entire industry. I'm talking more editing and what do they call that? When people
like augmenting
yeah, that type of stuff. I mean, even me with I would never be able to create an episode artwork by myself. I'm a terrible artist. That's a fact. I mean, I have like a 10-year-old's handwriting, I think, sometimes. And being able to create, episode artwork for each episode on the fly has changed the game for me. I mean, without AI, I don't think I'd even be able to have a podcast, because there's almost too much work on it, where I can summarize things. I can say, let's add this picture. Let's do this. Hey, if you were doing a, X marketing campaign, how would you go about with this? I mean, the possibilities are endless. And I saw an interesting comment. Someone say, I feel like I have too much work now that ChatGPT has come out and these large language models are here. And I told them back, I said, I think the reason you're having too much work is because you're realizing you can take on so much work now that AI is able to really kind of take a good chunk of the busy work away from you.
Right.
So
right.
Long answer there. So
no, that's exactly what we think. I mean, our philosophy has always been, how do we use AI to make it so you can get to the strategic things that you want to do, not the crap work. Let's have the computer do the crap work. That's the way to go,
Yes.
Going back to the business relationship and kind of the content of what your day-to-day job is, I mean, how do you feel about the ability of AI to build relationships with people and start to take over some of those functions?
Yeah, it's tough to answer, because I think right now in the industry we're in, I think relationships are still king. Where we're at is still, I think people are still questionable on AI. I don't really see a big change necessarily in the relationship side for another 5 to 10 years, unless obviously, major changes have happened. Where I have seen it change in our industry is really in the estimating side of things. Toggle AI is something that we tested out a little bit ago, which does takeoffs, and you can feed it drawings. But because the ornamental metals is so specific, I mean, it's really, sometimes the drawings are bad. It's really tough to find. We found out that it was good for like flooring, roofing, big picture type of stuff. But for the metals that we were dealing with, it really didn't take off as much as we thought it was. So I foresee estimating changing more from AI than necessarily project management or just construction in general. Because again, you need a project manager on a job. You need someone to call when things hit the fan. You really do, because in construction, as I'm sure you know, no project is perfect. And that's just how it is.
Right.
And so you need someone to call, you need someone to complain to, and someone to ask questions about things. As good as AI is, you go to Google and you type in, hey, how do you build this spiral stair with this type of radius? It's not going to give you a good answer. You still need to come to us to figure all those tough questions out. Like the other day, I had someone ask me, can you weld aluminum and carbon steel together? And the answer is an emphatic no.
Okay. I'll file that one away for the future. Good.
There you go. Because aluminum would melt. I mean, it would melt by the time you got it heated up for the steel. So it turns into a puddle. And the reason I know that question too is because year one I was here, I asked the question, and I think everyone thought I was an idiot for asking it. So, but back to the point, even things like that, where you're trying to figure out how we do these, the answers aren't necessarily all right there. Again, you could find that answer on Google, but if you're looking at different radiuses and stuff like that, there's still a lot to do.
Well, I think going back to your earlier point, though, if somebody has to show up to demonstrate the product and make sure it fits and does everything that's appropriate, I mean, yeah, I guess one day, Arnold Schwarzenegger, Terminator, will show up and do all of that for us, but that's not at all what ChatGPT is going to do. Like that's a long way off, even if it's ever possible, right? And even like the voice agents that I'm hearing that people are trying to make for like cold calling and whatnot, they sound so terrible.
Yeah, they're still in such an infancy phase, and it's hard to. I try and not be too critical about it, because a lot of people are like, well, don't forget the first phones, don't forget the first iterations of this, and I get that, but I think what we're dealing with right now is a lot of these companies are overshow. They're saying, look at all what they can do, and then they can only do 10% of that, and so there's a lot of hype in AI right now that it really needs to be pulled back. I mean, Toggle AI has some of the best marketing team out there. I mean, their stuff looks incredible. And then you get it working on your software and you're like, well, this isn't exactly what I was hoping for. And so there's a lot of that. And, everyone's always talking about AGI, which is this, the AI is going to do everything for you. And I think that's a little overhyped, and just to say at the least. But I do think AI will be able to help in the construction industry. And I'll add to that by saying, we're working on some stuff to help us in the budgeting phase. If you know anything about construction, there's budgeting, and then you go to hard bid, where your number, it means something. And what we're working on is a GPT in ChatGPT that we're uploading all of our, let's say, spiral stairs, all those from our quotes. And our quotes are very detailed. We upload all of our quotes from the past year, and then we're asking the GPT questions so that individuals like me can budget it. Because right now, those budgets go upstairs to the estimating. It take about a day or two to throw a budget on it, and then they're out the door. But they're very, this spiral stair, 2 levels, 500,000, right? There's nothing specific to it or very detailed to it. So what we're doing is we're putting all of our information into this tool and then asking it questions like, hey, if I had a radius of this and it was glass guardrail, what's about the price? And then it will be able to give us the information, say, hey, based on your last quotes, this is what we're looking at for pricing. And also, this is the quote where it came from. So if you want to look at more detail, you can find it there. Because right now, even all of our data, we have it all there. We're engineers. We love that data, but we don't utilize it as best as we can. And so that's what we're trying to do here. We're still doing the front end work, but again, if it's a budget, we don't need to spend a day or two on it. It should take me 15 minutes to type out some stuff and get that quick answer and go, hey, you're covered at this price.
And let me ask you this question. So you've got all the historical information. You got it in a GPT, a custom GPT, and you're querying it, basically asking it questions. Do people trust the answers, though? What's the process for QAing that?
So how we trust those answers is obviously we're doing it on budgets. We're not doing it on bids. So right. I want to make sure you clarify on that. Okay. And secondly, there's a lot of times where when you type in that information, it says, hey, a single flight at this is about 250,000. Almost all the time, I go right back into it and I say, well, where did you find this information? And it'll say, well, I got this from 2 quotes based on y'all's information, and here are the two quotes. And then from there, we can dig into that. So we're not using AI. We're using AI to find our answers at the end of the day, really, because there's so many times where it's like, well, where were our spiral staircases? Can we find one of those? And we're flipping through pages, and now it's like, hey, you can find it a lot easier from there. So we're trusting ourselves on that more than AI. I'm trusting the AI to find the answer.
Yes. Yeah. It's sort of like a souped up search in a way.
Yes, it's a souped up search that is more Shickel for us than just going to the broad internet and going, well, what do you think? Because I can't tell you how many times I've typed in the internet, on Google, how much would this cost? And it gives me an outrageous number. I'm like, where did it even get that from? I don't know what's happening here. So yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, this is a really cool project. I really like this project a lot. Are you seeing other trends more broadly for industry that you're seeing? Or is it like, do you think the trend is more specific applications like the ones that you're talking about here?
Well, I'm going to a talk next week, so I can get back to you on that. But what we're seeing is, I think construction has been so busy for the past couple years, if not decade, really, that I don't know if people have really taken the time to go, what do we need AI to take out for us, and what do we just do ourselves? Because right now, I think the construction industry is finally starting to get into, hey, some of this stuff can help us out with this and this and this. But like you said, do we trust it? Our accounting department's like, I'll use it for some things, but I got to trust my numbers at the end of the day. And I get that, because those are real life consequences. So I haven't seen the industry turn that much. And again, I think that's due to busyness. And to your earlier point, do you really trust the full data coming out? The only reason I trust it, like I said, is because it's our data at the end of the day.
Yeah. I mean, I know, Elon Musk, of course, loves to talk about how many accidents human drivers have, when people criticize like self-driving cars and stuff like that. But somehow it feels different still to me, Like,
I don't know where to place it. I really don't, because, just on a side note, we were working on an obituary for my grandmother the other week on this. And we rate my wife, who's very good at English, all the vocabulary, all that stuff. Even after ChatGPT came out with the answer for it and tidied it up per se, she was like, there's no consistency here. Like, what's happening here? And so you're right. I don't know where you go from that point of view, really.
Yeah, but I think you're right. I think it's super exciting, and I think the more specific you can make it, this is what I've been seeing, the better it is. Like not a general purpose, hey, do anything, but like solve this one very specific thing. That's where we've seen the most success.
Yes, and I would agree with that too. I mean, there's a lot of people out there that talk about how AI is going to destroy a lot of industries, but those that can figure out this one specific problem and how to wrap it or how to utilize AI with that are going to make a killing. Because they talk a lot about startups being taken over because of AI, but then they're saying, well, what about the top 10% that actually have a real life, use case?
Actually, it's kind of interesting because I definitely feel like the AI will come for the high-tech industry first. It's going to be a long time before they get to construction.
Yes. I mean, that's the thing. Our welders they really are artists. And I don't really, we have technology and we got lasers, we got brakes, top of the line stuff, but all of them still need a human operator and all of them still have their issues. And so you're absolutely right. You talk about the tech industry. I mean, they're going through a ton of layoffs right now. So it is one of those things where it's like, is AI already infiltrating that market? And, maybe 20 years it'll get to me. Hopefully I'm retired by then. I don't know,
Well, Ryan, this has been great. I really love getting your perspective on this. Tell folks how they can find your podcast.
Yes, you can find me on LinkedIn. My name is Ryan Collier. Again, if you click my LinkedIn profile, it'll say the King of Steel. And then the ChatGPT Report, which is the podcast I host weekly, and I do weekly interviews, is the ChatGPT Report, all one word, and it's the purple logo on LinkedIn as well as X. So follow me there, and if you have any questions, you can always shoot me over a LinkedIn message once you find me there.
Right on. Well, really appreciate you coming on the show. As a reminder to listeners, you can find every episode of the Make It, Move It, Sell It podcast at spiro.ai/podcast. And I don't know, Ryan, you think people should give us a good rating for this episode?
I think so. I hope so. At least a 4.
Yeah,
at least a 4
I
minimum.
think they should. I might go higher. We'll see. At any rate, please subscribe and give us a good rating and check out Ryan's podcast. And, for everybody tuning in, we really appreciate it. And we look forward to seeing you at the next episode.